Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show engineered to cut through the noise and deliver the precise insights you need to stay truly well informed. In our hyper-connected world, we're constantly navigating these huge oceans of information, right? Always needing to grasp new fields, complex concepts quickly without getting totally lost in the details. It's a universal challenge, isn't it? That feeling of needing to become an instant expert, but, without the years of sifting. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain a bit on a really powerful tool researchers use to tackle this very challenge, the scoping review. Think of it like commissioning an expert cartographer, someone to meticulously map out a new, often uncharted territory of knowledge, just giving you the essential lay of the land.
That's a perfect analogy, actually. At its core, a scoping review sets out to systematically identify, analyze, and report on all the available evidence within a very specific research area. Now, for those of you familiar with evidence synthesis, you'll know this immediately distinguishes it from, say, a traditional systematic review. Those usually zero in on a very precise question, like about the effectiveness of an intervention.
Right. Does this drug work, for example?
Exactly. Scoping reviews don't really aim to answer if something works. It's more about what's out there and how it's being studied. They're a more recent addition to the toolkit, you could say, but they've become prolific, really taking off since around 2005.
Okay, so our mission today isn't just defining these tools. We're actually taking a deep dive into how one of the most influential blueprints for them performs in the real world, specifically the methodology developed by the Joanna Briggs Institute, or JBI. We're asking, what do the actual users, the research cartographers themselves, say about it? What works well? And importantly, where could it be even better, sharper, clearer?
Well, the JBI published its comprehensive guidance for conducting and reporting these scoping reviews back in 2014. It was basically the definitive map-making instructions at the time. And this particular study we're dissecting today aimed to gather those crucial real-world experiences from people using that exact guidance. It's all about making sure the tools we rely on to generate and synthesize knowledge are as effective and, frankly, as practical as possible.
Exactly. And understanding this process, how these rigorous research tools are built and refined, it doesn't just deepen your appreciation for scientific method, it also gives you fantastic insight into how you can get informed quickly on pretty much any complex topic, whether it's for work, a personal passion, or just, expanding your horizons. It's like learning how to learn better. Okay, now we've sketched out why these tools are so critical. Let's really zoom in. Let's look at the architecture of a JBI scoping review. For our listeners maybe thinking about mapping their own knowledge terrain, what are the essential compass points? What makes a JBI review distinct?
Yeah, it's interesting how clearly JBI lays out the foundations. A JBI scoping review has several key elements, all designed for precision. It always focuses on a very specific area, right? And it anchors that focus with a well-defined research question. Often, and many working in evidence synthesis will recognize this, it uses the PCC mnemonic.
PCC.
Yeah. P for participants, C for the concept you're interested in, and the other C for the context of the review.
Okay.
That framework really ensures your scope is sharply defined right from the start. Beyond that, it requires a thoroughly documented search strategy and careful data charting and presentation. Transparency and reproducibility are key.
And crucially, what makes it so different from, say, a systematic review? You touched on this, but let's nail it down.
Right. The game changer is this. Scoping reviews don't require critical appraisal or metasynthesis of the studies they include.
No quality check.
Not in the same way. It's not an oversight. It's deliberate. It fundamentally changes the purpose and, honestly, the efficiency. Systematic reviews often spend a huge amount of time judging the quality of each study to figure out, like you said, if a treatment works. A scoping review is more about getting that broad, comprehensive map and getting it faster, without getting bogged down judging every single building on that map, so to speak.
Ah, so it's breadth first.
Exactly. Breadth first, depth maybe later if needed. It's a really powerful distinction when you're navigating new or really complex fields.
So they're not just sitting on a shelf. They have real strategic value. What are some of those practical uses where these mapping exercises really shine?
Oh, huge practical value, precisely because of that breadth-first approach. Scope and reviews are excellent for rapidly spotting the big knowledge gaps in a field, or for clarifying concepts that are maybe a bit fuzzy, or even just looking at how research itself is being done in an area like what methods are common. Are certain groups under-researched? They can even lay the groundwork, provide the parameters and an initial search for a more focused systematic review down the line,
Right.
or they can pinpoint exactly where new primary research is most needed. They're kind of like the recon mission before the main expedition.
Makes sense. Okay, so to really understand how this JBI methodology performs out in the wild, we need to hear from the people actually using it, the cartographers. And our window into this is a key 2020 study by Khalil and colleagues. They aim to do just that.
That's right. This study, actually published by the original authors of the JBI methodology, used an online survey to get direct feedback. They invited 51 authors who had successfully published scoping reviews in the JBI database of systematic reviews and implementation reports.
So people who knew what they were doing.
Precisely. The logic was sound. These are the practitioners, the experts on the ground. The goal was evaluating their experiences across the different stages of doing a scoping review, and specifically finding the strengths and the limitations of the JBI guidance.
And the participants, they seem like the right people to ask, coming straight from the research community.
Definitely. Of the 51 invited, 31 completed the survey. That's a 61% response rate, which is pretty robust for this kind of thing.
Yeah, that's good.
And the majority identified as researchers, that was 55%. Then educators at 25%. And a big chunk, 77%, were university employees.
So yeah, the feedback came from experienced, highly relevant users really embedded in that research world.
Okay, so for someone thinking about starting a JBI scoping review, what's the real-world timeline? What kind of commitment are we talking about? And what impact can this work actually have?
Well, the time commitment, as you'd probably expect for any serious evidence synthesis, it's substantial. The survey showed 42% of participants said their reviews took between 6 and 12 months to complete.
6 to 12 months, wow.
Yeah. And another 32% spent over a year. So you're looking at, what, 74%, a big majority taking more than 6 months.
And how does that compare to, say, a systematic review? It's comparable, though systematic reviews can take even longer on average. One figure puts it around 67 weeks. So it highlights that while scoping reviews have a different purpose, they are still a rigorous, time-intensive process. Requires real dedication.
But here's where it gets really interesting, right? The impact.
Mm-hmm.
All that effort, does it just end up in a report?
Not at all. This is maybe the most compelling finding. A huge 87% of these scoping reviews didn't just conclude, they actually ignited further work.
87%, that's massive.
It really is. Think about it. Nearly 9 out of 10 projects became catalysts, maybe for developing a new systematic review or securing grant funding or forming the whole basis for a PhD study.
Wow.
So these reviews aren't just snapshots. They're genuinely acting as fuel for future discovery.
Yeah.
That's a pretty amazing return on investment.
Definitely.
And just on some other practical points, 45% managed to publish their reviews in peer-reviewed journals, which is great for getting the word out. In terms of accessing the JBI method, most used the JBI manual itself, that was 55%, or they got face-to-face training, about 32%. And what's also quite telling, I think, about the researchers' dedication, a significant 68% of these reviews were actually not funded.
Really? So they did it off their own back, essentially.
It seems like it highlights a real passion, a deep drive to just advance knowledge in their field.
Okay, so given that huge investment of time and effort and the clear impact, what did users actually like most about the JBI guidance? What were the core strengths?
Yeah, the thematic analysis, looking at all the qualitative feedback, really highlighted several key strengths people consistently praised. It was seen as a well-documented process, which helps with transparency and reproducibility, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing it was developed by experts in the field gave people confidence. Users really valued its detailed and transparent guidance. They found its clarity and systematic approach particularly helpful. One participant summed it up perfectly, describing the methodology as having, quote, clarity, rigor, and explanation.
Clarity, rigor, and explanation. That really captures it. And from your perspective, what's the biggest result of that clarity for the researchers doing the work? Does it just speed things up, or does it fundamentally change how reliable their output is?
Oh, it absolutely does both. I mean, think about it. If instructions are fuzzy, you spend ages just trying to figure them out, right?
Right. Lost time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Clear guidance means less ambiguity so you can execute faster. But crucially, it also means more consistent, more trustworthy results across different research teams.
Yeah.
When the process is clearly mapped out, researchers spend less time second-guessing the how and more time on the actual synthesis, the interpretation. That significantly boosts the quality and reliability.
Okay.
It basically creates a shared language, a consistent playbook. Invaluable.
So it's not just speed, it's about building that shared understanding, making sure everyone's using the same effective rules.
That makes perfect sense. Now, even with strong foundations like that, the pursuit of knowledge always means there's room to grow, room to refine things. So where did users feel the JBI methodology maybe fell a bit short or needed more detail? Where were the bits of the map that needed further refinement? Indeed. And the feedback here was also quite clear. The two most prominent areas needing refinement, almost jumping out from the data, were, first, a real need for more examples,
Examples.
particularly when it came to defining the inclusion criteria, like what studies get in, and critically, in the presentation of the results. How do you show what you found? One participant's feedback was pretty blunt, lacking examples in every step.
Ouch. But understandable.
Totally. It's like trying to follow a complex recipe with no pictures, right?
Yeah.
For researchers, clear, illustrative examples make the difference between clarity and confusion, especially when you're grappling with nuances, what counts as in. How do I best show these complex findings from all these different sources?
That makes so much sense. It's like having the map coordinates but no legend for the symbols. And those inclusion criteria, that's often the make or break decision point, isn't it? Get the scope wrong there and the whole review could be shaky.
Exactly right. And that brings us neatly to the second major point, the strong call for more specific guidance. This echoed particularly for developing those really robust inclusion criteria, more guidance about inclusion criteria, as one user put it,
Okay.
and also for presenting the results. Another felt the results presentation needs clarification. These aren't minor steps. They're fundamental to the review's integrity. When you're dealing with potentially vast amounts of info, having a crystal clear lens for what to include and then a compelling, standardized way to present your findings, it's absolutely paramount. Some other areas came up too, data extraction, for instance. About 14% felt the guidance there was inadequate.
And data extraction can be tricky, right? It's not always straightforward.
Not at all. It's often complex, iterative, definitely not linear. You might need really dynamic, flexible forms to capture different data from different study designs. And furthermore, about 14% strongly disagreed, that the guidance for writing up the overall scoping review report was adequate. And 10% felt similarly about the discussion section.
Yeah.
This really points to, I think, ongoing challenges in standardizing the reporting for what is still an evolving type of review.
Yeah.
How do you best tell the story of the synthesis?
That really highlights the challenge of putting a formal structure around what can be quite a fluid process sometimes. And it seems users also suggested the JBI software itself could maybe be updated to include templates like you see for other systematic reviews, just to help streamline things a bit. Take some of that burden off the researcher.
Yeah, that suggestion came through as well. Anything to make the practical execution smoother is usually welcomed.
So putting this all together, what does it mean for the future of scoping reviews? How is this valuable feedback, these insights from the front lines, how is it actually informing progress and refinement of these tools?
Well, this feedback is absolutely crucial, especially because, as we said, it's still a relatively new technique compared to the long history of systematic reviews.
Yeah.
And we're actually seeing a broader kind of global movement towards more standardization, partly in response to these kinds of challenges. A prime example is the development of the PRISMA-ScR checklist. Yeah, that stands for Preferred Reporting Items for Systematic Reviews and Meta-Analysis, but specifically for scoping reviews. This checklist was designed precisely to standardize the reporting of scoping reviews, aiming to address many of those concerns raised in the study about presentation clarity and structure.
Ah, okay. So the field is evolving towards more standardized reporting.
Exactly. And what's really encouraging is that the JBI approach, how they recommend conducting and reporting scoping reviews, it's already largely congruent, largely lines up with that PRISMA-ScR checklist.
That's good.
It really demonstrates a clear move towards more standardized, rigorous procedures right across the board. And the fact that a comprehensive checklist like PRISMA-ScR didn't even exist before 2015, that probably explains some of the feedback we heard about lack of clarity in report writing. The field itself was still finding its standardized voice,
Yeah.
That's a fantastic example of a methodology dynamically adapting to user needs and evolving standards.
It really is great to see these ongoing refinements, making sure that scoping reviews continue to be a robust and increasingly valuable tool for synthesizing evidence across all sorts of fields. It just underscores how the pursuit of knowledge is never really finished, even for the tools we use to discover that knowledge. Okay, so to kind of wrap things up, Scoping reviews are clearly essential tools. They help us map and understand complex research landscapes, giving that crucial, broad overview. And the JBI methodology, despite being relatively new, is already a highly valued foundational guide in this process, praised for its clarity, its rigor.
Exactly. And the core message from the users, the people actually doing the work, is crystal clear. While the framework is systematic and robust, it would benefit hugely from more detailed concrete examples,
Mm.
especially for clarifying those critical inclusion criteria, and really fundamentally for presenting the results.
Mm-hmm.
Enhancing those areas wouldn't just address the pain points they mentioned. It would significantly boost clarity and ease of use for everyone, from seasoned researchers to those just starting out.
Yeah, absolutely. This deep dive really illustrates the dynamic nature of even established methods, doesn't it? Shows how they're constantly evolving, being refined through that real-world user feedback. And that ensures that the very tools we use to create and share knowledge are as clear, effective, and accessible as possible for you. Whether you're doing a review yourself or just trying to get up to speed on a new topic, it's about making the process of understanding, well, more understandable.
What's really fascinating here, I think, is how even in a field totally dedicated to evidence and rigorous methods, the tools themselves are constantly under the microscope, evaluated, critiqued, refined. It's just a powerful reminder that knowledge itself is always a work in progress, and the methods we use to get it must be too. So here's a thought. What might this mean for other areas where clear guidance and refined tools are absolutely essential? Think about surgical protocols, or maybe the complex logic of software development. How often do we truly pause to evaluate the maps we're using in those fields, rather than just focusing on the journey itself?